you need to get into real estate. When you're salaried, you're limited. It's the most incredible feeling in the world. There is no limit to the amount of money that you could make. Now we're potentially facing another market shift, they want to call it, but it's going to be a little bit of a crash. They exist in your phone. They're a potential client. So pick up the phone. All of a sudden, it was like a light switch went off.
Okay, hello and welcome everybody. Welcome to our millions and billions of fans out there. This is Sofa Broker coming to you from East London, but also a special treat for you. We have a guest currently residing and lording it over the real estate market in South Florida, in Miami. We have Mr. David Kurz. Hi there, David. Say hello to everyone.
Hey, everybody. Great seeing everybody. Great connecting with everybody. Looking forward to doing this podcast with you guys. Thank you for the invite. Much appreciated. Very honored to be here on with you.
Again, you started again. You don't even mention me. Nothing. I just sit in the corner like I should be somewhere else, don't I? Why you just invade it? It's your podcast. This is
so David, welcome again. And I should probably reiterate that I always forget when we have a guest, I forget to mention that Dan is here. And the reason that you are here is because Dan is here. So Dan, do you want to take over?
Do you want a glass of milk with that?
Oh,
just to shoot yourself out a little bit. So look, yeah, no, I bumped into Dave. All I needed to do was bump into him once at an event in a couple of months ago, and his energy and everything is so high. And if anyone's checking out his website or wants to check out YouTube, whatever, Stanley will put some links in. But his energy is so high, and we only had a couple of brief conversations, but we had a mutual understanding of real estate, because we know now that real estate reaches the UK and the US, and it's tied together. Like, you know, he was one of the first to bring it over. So what I'd be interested to do, Dave, is just to dig in a little bit about the backstory. Like, we ask everyone this, right? Because we asked you this, how you got into real estate, because we never have found a kid yet that's 7 or 8 years old that asked their teacher at school, what do you want to do? Says, I want to be a real estate agent. Right? It's kind of, everyone's fell into it. So tell us a bit about your background.
It's funny that you say that, because I always say no one wants to be a real estate agent when they grow up, but everyone gets a license. You know?
That's brilliant.
It's you know, we in South Florida particularly, you know, the state of Florida has about 109,000 real estate agents. I think there's about 1.7 million in the United States. South Florida by itself, Palm Beach, Fort Lauderdale, Miami-Dade County, holds about 65,000 plus of those licenses. So very saturated yet exciting place to do real estate, which is why so many people get the license, right? Everybody like graduates from that real estate school and they're hoping to sell, you know, Bill Gates his next $65 million house in Miami Beach, right? So
yeah,
it just you know, it happens.
I think that's sorry, David, that's to butt in. We've got the delay. We'll get there, and you know, through the next 20 minutes, we'll all sort out the delay side of things. But what's interesting about what you just say there, and we'll touch on it, I'm sure, is the fact that there is that thing with a broker: get your license and dream that you will sell Bill Gates his house. You know, I think that's an American thing. I think we can all say that pretty safely anyway, to have that kind of that sort of dream and vision. Do you think that Florida in itself has changed a lot, maybe in the last sort of, in that sort of pandemic, post-pandemic kind of era, in terms of numbers and people pursuing that dream?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you know, South Florida has become a go-to place. You know, when the pandemic happened, you know, everyone was in panic, and there were a few states that just kind of said, look, we're gonna follow the rules, but we're not going to really panic, and we're going to open up businesses earlier than everyone else. And no, you don't have to wear your mask by yourself in your car, and, you know, things like that. And so, you know, and Florida happened to be one of those states, Florida, Texas, a couple other states. I traveled through South Dakota. They didn't even know COVID was happening. You know, I went through California, because I'll tell you that story later, but I ended up in California in 2020 during the height of COVID, and California was, you know, for lack of better words, a shit show, right? And I mean, they were just in complete panic. And then I went down to Huntington Beach, California, where apparently they didn't feel connected to the rest of California. Every restaurant, every bar, I got a haircut, everything was open, right? The beaches were open, everything was wild. So it was a very unique time. I think what happened during the pandemic was people started to flock to these particular places. People wanted to go somewhere where they didn't feel like they were prisoners in their own home, that they could go to a grocery store, that they could go out, that they could maybe go to work, right? And when, the era of Zoom became extra popular, and then offices said, well, we're going to start working again, but we're going to do it via Zoom and we're going to go virtual. And people started to say, well, I could still have my New York City pay while living in South Florida and saving on taxes. And so they were saving on taxes. They were freer than they were in New York City. Like in New York, you had to have a card that proved that you were double vaccinated before you could go into a restaurant, and a lot of people didn't want to get double vaccinated. So, they would come to South Florida and just go eat at a restaurant, right? And so that made a big difference for us. It really helped us have a real estate boom, if you will. I don't know what that means for the few months that are coming up. We could talk about that later, but it's going to be wild. I never actually told you my story, though, which is funny. We just got into the...
No, so tell me, I'm interested to hear...
This is how it works on this podcast.
I'm interested to hear... so everyone had the COVID story, and it does feel like South Florida had a better one. I mean, when I went there, it was the first time I went there, well, apart from the time when I was actually spannered in Miami, laying on the beach for 12 hours, when I got woke up.
Just to clarify, David, he went to Vegas, right? Flew back to London via Miami, and let's just say he fell asleep on Miami Beach in the midday sun.
I had a 12-hour stopover, so it was 12 o'clock at night. I went take me to Miami Beach. No one was there, and I had to have a wash next to a hobo, like to get my head going. But that was my only experience of it. Apart from, like, I know everyone doesn't need a motorbike. They don't need a crash helmet, do they? In Florida, they ride around. I see some guy went past on a Harley, didn't have a crash helmet on. I was like, this is bliss. So what got you into real estate? What was you doing before? Did you bang straight into it?
No, I spent 9 years in the United States Marine Corps. So I was in the military for almost a decade. And when I got out of the military, I got out because I earned a degree in international business, and in my brain somewhere, being an ignorant kind of child still, because I was coming out of the military, it's all I knew. In my brain somewhere, that meant that somebody was going to hire me and give me a corner office somewhere with a view of Central Park, right? And then I quickly realized that the degree really didn't mean much, except that maybe my resume will get a little higher on the list. And then I found out that that wasn't even the truth, because I could have all the degrees I wanted at the time, 2 degrees, but I didn't have any experience other than weapons repair and shooting and marching and, doing stuff like that. So it was very hard to find a job, and I did find one, but my cousin was in mortgages at the time. And this is 2004, 2005, 2006. These are the years when the real estate market went completely bananas. And my cousin sat down with me. She said, Dave, you have this unique gift of speaking to people. You need to get into real estate. And my cousin was in mortgages at the time. By the way, my cousin was living in a beautiful penthouse in Miami Beach. She was driving Mercedes-Benz. Like, I wanted to do what she was doing. And I said, well, why don't I get into mortgages, And she said, no. She says, mortgages is for the people who don't like to be in front of people, the people that like to be behind spreadsheets and computers. You need to go get in front of people. So go do the real estate route. And so I went the real estate route and never looked back, man. I went through the uptick, the huge uptick, and the craziness of 7, and then 08 crash, 09 recovery. We went through all of that. Now the current, COVID boom, I call it the World War II boom, but that's a whole nother conversation. And, the COVID boom. And then now we're potentially facing another market shift, they want to call it, but it's going to be a little bit of a crash. Maybe not a 2000.
I mean, it's
going to head that
on
way.
That note, actually, one of so going back to 07, 08, just really the craziest period in real estate history, and certainly in my 20 or 30 years, it was mad. And one of the things that on our academy that Dan and I have always got is the kids that do our academy, teach them how to become brokers US style over here, which is not easy. But one of the things we used to get them to do was to watch the film The Big Short. Not only is it a great film, but it just tells you so much about the craziness of real estate and how it can affect the world, and how it can affect someone working at Joe and the Juice, and how it can affect someone working in Wall Street and their families, etc. How how was it for you in that time being right there? What was it? I mean, it must have been carnage.
It was it was nuts. I was living in Miami Beach at a building called the Mirador. Very nice apartment, beautiful. We just renovated the whole thing, 2 bedrooms overlooking the ocean and the beach. Um, and I had this great office in South of Fifth, which is the prominent area of South Beach. Like it is, if you're in South of Fifth, you probably have made an album, play basketball, you know what I mean? Like that's who lives in South of Fifth. Um, and I had a great office there. And all of a sudden, it was like a light switch went off. Like we went from selling and selling and selling and selling. I mean, I was doing 3, 4 closings on the same table with the same people at the same time, you know?
Wow.
And all of a sudden it was just like a light switch, like it just completely turned off. It was like we woke up one morning and the market crashed, and the real estate market crashed, and interest rates went nuts and everything went crazy. And then it was like, oh shit, what do we do now? And I remember sitting there. I had to give up the office. I had to move out of my apartment. Like everything changed, and I remember thinking, how do we get through this? And I started doing some research, and I just really started
My
playing.
next question was exactly that.
Yeah.
How do you?
Yeah, I started trying to understand what is the next shift. Because look, in real estate, property will always move. We can agree on that, right? No matter what the market does, somebody's going to buy, somebody has to sell, right? And so we were in a weird situation where a lot of people had to sell or they were facing foreclosure. Unfortunately, they had to sell for significantly less than what they owed on the property, because janitors were buying $1 million properties, right? And
Yeah,
now these
right.
$1 million properties were worth 250. And so, and for us, Miami, it was like the biggest crash. We fell the hardest. And and so we have to go to somebody and say, well, what do we do? You don't have $750,000 in your bank account to recover. So I immediately learned how to do short sales. And so the first year of the crash, we did over 60 short sales that year, because we started.
David, if you can just hold on that a moment, because I want to dig into that a bit with the guys. So I don't think they understand what short sales are.
I was going to say.
Yeah. So, and it's kind of interesting the way that when we do stuff from the States, there's so much that has come out, and there's so many, different mechanics, the way things can happen and do. Like, we've just started to get 100% mortgages again in the UK.
Wow.
And that's been a while, and that's just started to become a thing again. But I don't think, when we talk about estate agents, which they say, a real estate agent is an estate agent over here, we need to call them real estate agents, because estate agents are hated in the UK. If it's the difference between a lawyer and an estate agent. You shake one of their hands, you're going to lose a finger. So they don't like us, right? Which is different to in the US, right, where everyone's kind of good. So, but there's so many different mechanics that you can get to as an agent, right? Just quickly, what is a short sale? Can you explain that to someone that doesn't know? Like, sorry.
So a short sale is when a bank sits down with the owner of a property. The owner's now behind on their mortgage. A lot of people lost their jobs during that time, right? And so now the owner's behind on their mortgage. The bank is threatening with foreclosure. And the owner says, how can I fix this? And the bank says, well, you can sell the house, but understanding that you can only sell it for market value, we're going to approve you to sell it for less than what you owe us.
Wow.
And we'll wipe.
Jesus, that's really good, right? That's like a get out of jail free card.
It's a huge get out of jail free card, because you don't have to deal with a foreclosure, right? And in some cases, the bank will actually pay you to do the short sale. So some of my clients made like $5,000 because the bank wanted them out of the house. They didn't want to carry the debt, so they wanted to write off the debt and then and have the property removed from their portfolio. It was better for the bank because the bank could move money again. right?
Yeah.
Even though they weren't making all their money back, the government was subsiding all the banks. So they just needed to keep moving the money. And everybody understood, including the banks and including the government, that if property moves, jobs are created.
Yeah.
And the short sale, I don't want to say pandemic, the short sale market, also the REO market, which was real estate owned, which means that the bank actually foreclosed on the property and now owns the property. And so they would hire a real estate agent to sell said property for market value. And so the banks would send an appraiser out to check out the house. They'd value the home and they'd say, okay, we approve it to be sold at X price. And in many cases, you have to be really good at doing this. Some banks would hold you to the debt; they'd hold it against you. Other banks would release you from the debt. I got all of my clients released from debt. We wouldn't do any short sales without them being released. But once you do a short sale, your credit, gets hit. And America, that credit score is everything, right? And so your credit gets hit and you weren't allowed to buy a house for a while. And, you went from having a 700 credit score to a 500 credit score. And, it had a lot of effects, but it proved later on down the line, about a year in, that banks started to say things like, okay, if you had a short sale, we're going to allow you to buy within 3 years. But if you had a foreclosure, it's going to be 5 years. Right. And then the short sale became.
So, wow. So they basically said to the bank said, we'll swallow this debt.
Yep.
Right. So not the bank, sorry, the government, we'll pick up this debt for you. Right. And if you come on board and say yes to us in 3 years, we'll put you back in the system again.
Right. We'll put you
if
back.
If you fight it, it's going to be 5. Jesus Christ.
That was the initial. Then it became 2 years. Then it became 12 months. Right. So as time went on and people proved that they can get back into working, get back into paying their mortgages, get back into a home, be trusted again with this, then it became, all right, a year out of foreclosure or a year out of bankruptcy or a year out of short sale. There was a loan program for you.
Wow.
That's amazing.
That's just incredible.
And I guess the people that was the homeowners that were too proud were the ones that fell by the wayside and got nailed.
Listen, I got to tell you, there was a lot of pride went out the window. I'll be honest with you. There were some people who were too proud and some people who thought they could fix it. And then there was the complete opposite. Then there were people who took advantage of the situation. And those are the people I hated working with. And so, there's people who said, well, the banks are doing this for everybody, so I'm going to take advantage of this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop paying my mortgage, even though I can. Right? Because these folks still had jobs and they were paying their mortgages fine. I'm going to stop paying my mortgage, even though I can. And I would ask, but why would you stop paying your mortgage? Well, because I owe $1 million and my house is only worth 500. Why would I keep paying my mortgage? I'm like, I don't know, because you signed a contract. Like, just crazy thought, And they would just stop. And then 3 months in, they would get filed for foreclosure. And they would go to an attorney that they would pay $500 a month to. And this attorney would fight that foreclosure off, saying, no, we're working with them. We're trying to modification. We're going to short sale. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And the courts were so flooded that your next court date was maybe 3 months away. And then you could push it another 3 months and then push it another 3 months. And so next thing you know, these folks are in these houses not paying mortgages for 12 to 18 months before they even were forced into the short sale.
Shocking stuff, isn't it?
I can see that happening though. Some geezer's got £1 million in his bank and he owes $1 million on a depreciating asset because of the first time ever that appreciating asset's coming down. And he thinks to himself, well, I don't have to have scruples. I have to have money in the bank. Right. So, I'm going to do this. And it's just, you can see that, right?
So that's all the depressing stuff.
Yeah.
Fast forward to now. And in the interim years, Florida, Miami just skyrocketed. It's one of the hottest places on the planet to buy real estate. We all know, other areas like Fort Lauderdale's benefited and other places, I'm guessing on the Gulf. Yeah. What I'm interested in, actually, from the point of view of how we all got together, is tell me about this whole thing around branded residences, around sort of Aston Martin and Porsche and all these guys doing, branded luxury blocks. What's the deal with all of that? Is that still hot?
I love that you brought that up, man. And it is incredibly high. First of all, it's incredible to me how people in South Florida are so superficial that you can't just own you can't own the shoes anymore. You got to own the apartment by the company who owns the shoes, right?
Yeah.
It just blows my mind. And that's right. If you're from South Florida and you heard this, I said it. Okay.
Are you gonna get home all right? You're not getting.
You got any clients left?
Listen, man, Miami's the only place in the world we had 65% rise in pricing, home prices from the pandemic to now. About 65% were up. Okay. Which means that if there is a market crash, we're probably going to hit the hardest, right? And during that time, you started to see, so Porsche Tower came up. I think that was one of the first ones. And Porsche Tower was designed by Mr. Deser, and Deser created something called the Deserator. And the Deserator, which he patented, was an elevator for your car. And
what the hell?
So there's a small garage in the building. This is a very tall building on the beach. There's a small garage for guests. Every apartment has 2 parking spaces at the apartment. So you drive.
So what?
You drive into the you drive into the Deserator, and it takes you up your car up to your apartment, and then you pull into your parking space in front of the Deserator.
Man, that's cool.
That's just wicked.
No, that's cool. I love that.
And the wall between your apartment and your parking space is glass. So you're sitting in your living room looking at your Porsche and your Lamborghini in their little spots that the Deserator brought up for you. Yes, sir.
What if someone's got like a really shitty old Honda Accord?
They're not going
probably
to.
Can't afford something at the Porsche Tower.
Yeah. Solly always pretends that he drives around in crap cars. No, you don't. No, you don't. It's very similar. Do you remember that place next to Harrods where the whole front room lifted up?
Yeah, that was
so.
Cool.
Yeah, there was something similar. We had it was like a townhouse or something.
Yeah,
and it's really hard to park near Harrods. So the front of the property literally lifted up, and the floor lifted up. So all the furniture lifted up.
He had squidgy furniture, so it could go into the ceiling.
You drove into it. You drove into the car, and then the car drove down. So the car was underground in the kitchen area. And it was basically.
Yeah, but mate, that's not taking a Porsche GT3 up to the 32nd floor.
No, this was like to the guy. The guy could look at it because the kitchen was laid out around it, and it was glass.
So, David, have you got a flat, an apartment for sale in that building at the moment?
I don't currently, but we have before. And
what do they sell at?
You're talking minimums $5 to $6 million on the lower floors. On the lower floors.
So the higher you go up, the more expensive it gets.
Oh yeah,
right?
This building's I think 60 stories. So, you can do the math on that. The Epic building recently sold their penthouse for $30 million. I mean, just I think it was the Aston Martin sold their penthouse for $72 million. It's just
so there. It does sell. This stuff does sell.
Oh, we do.
Right?
We have buyers for it. People come from everywhere. South America, Dubai, you name it. They come. People want to have property. First of all, if you're ultra wealthy and you have that much money, you know that there's security in American dollar. So you want to buy in America. And if you're ultra wealthy, you're not buying in the woods of Texas. You're buying in Miami Beach, in New York City. You're buying
And Jeff Bezos, he's just sold his house in Washington State, hasn't he, on Lake Washington?
Jeff Bezos came to Florida. He bought one property for $60 million, and then he bought his wife a property around the corner for $65 million.
Wow. Is that like having one step up from his and hers bedrooms?
Yeah.
So if they have an argument, they don't have to go back to the same place.
Yeah.
Listen,
he's got more than one girlfriend.
I personally think that Jeff Bezos is trying to amass a few of the lots so that he can build like a mega home, which would more than likely be the most expensive home in the world. He lives on one of the islands. Next island over, there's a house that's on 3 lots, which is a big deal on these islands in Miami. And the home on 3 lots is owned by the gentleman who invented Viagra. So everything's very strong and up and up.
Ah, friend, Sonny uses him a lot. He knows him. He's one of his best mates. Star Island in Miami.
Yeah,
Is that what they sell? stars one.
Island. These are the islands, like, you know, Oprah has a house on Star Island. You know, there's just like this is the place to be. You know, Gloria Stefan has her home on Star Island. You know, then it's like Star Island, Palm Island, Hibiscus Island. Then you have Fisher Island, which is completely separate, that you have to actually ferry to. You can't just drive on. You got to drive your car onto the ferry, and then the ferry takes you over. These are the top of the line. And going back to the branded buildings, it's not Miami Beach anymore just by itself. Now it's also on the downtown Brickell side, which was really not the big thing, but now it is. Now Aston Martin came in, they bought the tiniest little slither of land. Like if you saw the land that Aston Martin is built on before they actually built it, there was no way in the world that you would think to yourself, they're going to put a 66-story luxury building here. It just feels
like Manhattan.
It really feels like the Aston Martin's about to just crack off with the ground and go.
Yeah.
You know, but
So one of the things I'm curious about, Dave, and hopefully this will be good for business, is there's talk now with the sort of the way things are going with your president and his sort of rhetoric that maybe there's a bit of a downturn with the US and all that kind of stuff. But obviously that then creates value for someone somewhere else. Traditionally, like UK buyers have always loved Orlando. We've always liked Orlando, just as Europeans have always liked it. But, you know, as a Florida guy doing loads of business, if you were looking to, you know, as a European buyer or foreign buyer looking at Florida, what would you do? Where would you go? And we haven't got that long, but where would you go right now? Where would you invest?
Man, I think if you're a European buyer, you stay looking in Orlando. There's plenty of opportunity for you to buy there and have something that you can come back and forth to, but you could also rent out while you're away as an Airbnb. I think that's the special thing about Orlando, is that Disney's never going to go away. The parks are never going to go away. The events are never going to go away. And so while you're back in the UK for the majority of the year, you can depend on having your place rented and consistent, you know, consistent flow of people coming through. In Miami, you know, the Airbnb situation is a little bit tighter. So a lot of the buildings, especially luxury buildings, don't allow it. So they don't want a lot of transient movement in and out. So we've got some condo hotels that are coming up. Those are really great. We've got some amazing condo hotels that are coming up. They're 500 square foot units, 280 square foot units. Gives you opportunity, again, to have a place to come to that you can use whenever you want. But when you're not there, you could have it rented out and have it profit you some money.
So, David, look, we're going to start wrapping up now, but what I want you, just for a minute, have you got any advice you could give to new brokers that are, you know, they're in the UK, they're busting into the scene, you know, what advice could they take from you, someone that's, you know, departed so much information in the past, you know, your YouTube, you know, your Instagram stuff, you're doing stuff all the time, you're constantly at it. What is the secret that they could take away from this today?
Well, I'm going to say, give me 2 or 3 things to say. And first thing is, you and I spoke, and I didn't know that many brokers in the UK were salaried. And if I'm going to say anything right off the bat, is embrace the commission structure. Because when you're salaried, you're limited to how much money you can make. But when you're on commission, it is your business to run, and you get to there is no limit to the amount of money that you could make and the amount of units you can move. It's the most incredible feeling in the world to have $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 months because you're moving property consistently. So embrace it, love it, take action on it, and enjoy the stress that you feel when a property is not moving and you might not get paid. Enjoy that stress, because you know, there's 2 types of people. There are the people that fall into a corner and cry it away, and there are the people that use that as fuel. Like, okay, this deal's not working, so I have to go find 3 more, right? And so be that person, and that's a game changer for you. The other thing I would say is, you know, stay relevant. And when I say stay relevant, I mean in a very broad case, on social media, in your emails, in consistent communication with people that you know, people that already love, like, and trust you, people that love you, people that you've sold homes to, people, like all of those people that you've ever connected or touched ever, ever. If they exist in your phone, they're a potential client. And so pick up the phone and make some phone calls. Get away from texting, get away from, hoping that if you post enough videos on social media, you'll make a ton of money. You could have 1 million followers on TikTok and sell 0 properties. I've seen it all day long. Or you could have 200 followers on Instagram and have 200 people that are real deal cheerleaders for you and will always refer you business because they trust you and they trust your ethic. And so consistently communicate with these folks on a phone call. Hi, how are you? How you doing? And really, really care about their kids and their family and the things that they're going through, and remember those things, or put them into a CRM if you don't have a great memory like me.
I think that is fantastic. Yeah. And I think, David, on that, we would love to speak again. I'm sure we'll be out to speak again, and we'll see you in the States when we're out next time. Everybody, look, I would say to you, reach out to David as well. He's really approachable. He'd like to connect with you. He'd like to listen to your stories and share stories. And he's there. If you've got any stuff going on in Florida or around there, and you need an agent,
me first.
Right? Go through Solly first. But speak to David. And on that point, I'm going to wind it in. Amazon, YouTube, Spotify, and the other ones that we can never remember. So see you later and good luck.
Cheers, man.
Bye.
Bye.